All right, good evening, everyone. So our 5 minutes is up, so we are going to start right away. So for today's edition, we are having Olusegun Owoade walk us through how, as founders, we can apply to a Y Combinator. So for those of us who don't know Y Combinator is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, startup accelerator in the world. And the reason why they are the biggest is because beyond the money that they get to invest in startups who take part in the accelerator, startups get to get access to resources, get access to investors, that would help them grow and scale their businesses. And even after the Y Combinator event ends, these founders also get a lifetime access of support, from the YC alumni, so, but one thing about Y Combinator is that it is very difficult, to get into. And I've heard a couple of people say that Y Combinator is even harder to get into than Harvard, and that's because Y Combinator is very competitive. But I found that today, the speaker today, Olusegun Owoade, launched a startup in April 2021, just a couple of months ago, and it was able to, apply into YC and get accepted into Y Combinator, which is no mean feat, if you ask me. And so today we want to listen to him talk about how he was able to do it. What are the things that he encountered during application, and then the interview process. What were the things that he was asked? What did he do? And how the whole process went from application to acceptance into the program. So I'm going to just give the floor open, to Olusegun Owoade to walk us through, how he applied, to Y Combinator. So Olusegun Owoade, I believe you're online with us. Can you hear me, sir?
Yes, I'm here.
All right, that's great. So nice to have you here with us, and thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to do this. We really, really appreciate this, sir.
That's fine.
All right, so the floor is open to you, sir. Just walk us through, in the next 30 to 40 minutes. You can even talk about how you started your startup, how it has been from when you started up to this point, and then you talk about how you applied, and got into Y Combinator. So the floor is yours, sir. Thank you so much.
Great. Can I share my screen?
Yes, you can, sir.
Sorry, just a moment. Okay, great. Please confirm. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can. Yes, we can.
Okay. Great. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Olusegun Owoade. I'm the CEO co-founder of Mecho Autotech. So we're basically a platform that connects vehicle owners with vetted mechanics, basically to simplify the process of people repairing their vehicles in Africa, with initial focus on Nigeria. So that's basically what Mecho is all about. And we launched in April 20th to be precise. And, here we have today. I remember when we started out, we just wanted to do our thing. And, we had a few mentors who were basically supporting us and monitoring our progress. And at some point, I think it was just a few weeks after we launched, and then one of the advisors, advised us to apply to YC, and this was some few weeks to the close of application, and I just looked at the whole thing and I said, hey, considering the fact that we're just starting out, we had a whole lot of things to do, and then to be saying sitting down doing some plenty application, it was just something that doesn't sound right to us. So we just decided to say, hey, we're not really interested at this point. And then as we kept moving on, so we're lucky to be able to gain some some initial traction. We're able to do some good numbers in the first few weeks, and then the guy kept following up, hey, you guys should do the application. Well, so eventually when the pressure was sort of getting too much, he said, okay, let's do it. And then this was May. And then application already closed in March, if I remember correctly. Yes, application closed like towards end of March. And then we submitted our application first week in May or thereabouts. So it was clearly marked late application because it was like, a couple of weeks, after the close of application. And then luckily we got an invite for interview, right? And we did the interview, and a few days after the interview, a couple of follow-up questions, from the YC team, and then a few days after, the confirmation came that we got accepted. So that's basically our story. I know the session is basically all about. So the session is basically all about how to apply to YC. Yes, how to apply to YC. So I'm not going to talk about the benefits. I know the hosts, mentioned a few things about benefits of being part of YC. I can confirm here as a living testimony that YC is really, really massive. And then if any founder here, is considered YC as something they would love as part of their startup journey, that I recommend that you take some time out to read about the benefits of being part of YC. But I can confirm to you there is a whole lot of benefits. Some guys reached out to me a few weeks back. So these guys basically they just signed an investment with a couple of local and regional investors of about $4 million. And then they got accepted into YC. They interviewed and then they got accepted. And so they were kind of confused as per, whether to go ahead with YC or the, the term sheet they've already concluded, and then waiting for these guys to disburse the funds and all. And then my answer or my response to them was very simple: do YC and forget about these guys, right? So that's basically for for you to understand the level of benefits. I mean, YC we only give them 125K, right? But I told them to forget about $4 million and take 125K. It's a whole lot of benefits that's attached to that. So, to founders out there, just take some time out to understand, what YC is all about. So, very quickly, I'll go through the process, and then just to say this is basically going to be based on our own experience. We don't claim to be an expert. Of course, we've never done one before. So the tips will be basically based on our experience and then what worked for us, right? So there are two key stages involved in the YC application process. So there's a written application stage, and then if your application is successful, you get an invite for interview, and then if your interview is good, and then you'll be accepted. So those are the two key stages involved in the application process. And then just to add that, so YC runs like 2 batches in a year. They do winter and summer batches. Mecho was part of summer 2021 batches that just that ended last September. So yeah, you can also go to like YC application page, and I see the formats of of the questions on that written application page, just to get yourself familiarized with the questions. But basically, the questions are all about your business model, your markets, your target markets, your traction, and then the team. So that was basically what the written application stage is all about. So in total, I think there are about 50 questions. Some of them are just like pretty straightforward questions. That's just like a line, 2 lines, kind of response. And then the interview stage, it's just 10 minutes. Very crazy. You spend the whole a lot of time preparing, and it's just 10 minutes. And so if occasionally they do have, they ask you to stay back after the first 10-minute interview, that there could be a follow-on interview. So they ask you, and then they will communicate via email. And then so if after 1 hour you didn't get any email from them, so it means you're good, that there won't be any follow-on interview. For us, we were lucky. We didn't have any follow-on interview. It was just that first 10 minutes for us, and then we got in. So I will share tips based on our experience for each of the stages. I think a number of people, mentioned, the fact that, YC received a whole lot of applications every session, right? And so I confirmed it myself based on what the partners, the YC partners, shared, right? And then there was a letter that we got from YC that basically, explains clearly that they received like, tens of thousands of applications, every application, stage. So the point here is these guys reviews a whole lot of applications. And it is important that you answer the questions like in a very concise manner, and you communicate efficiently. So if you start writing a whole lot of jargons like all the big words, and then at the end of the day you're not able to communicate anything. In fact, from what the guys said, if there are some applications that they won't really give a whole lot of consideration if from the the structure of the language and everything. If it's just like a straight no, they will just put it aside and focus on a number of ones that are compelling, well structured, and all of that. And really, in an attempt to be massive and all of that, so people tend to to write a lot of jargons, a lot of things that people will not easily understand. It's for YC. You want to ensure that you avoid that kind of practice, because it's just like if you are pitching your business to any angel investors, right? They want to understand, to be able to understand your business, and that's the whole point. So are you able to communicate, to explain what you're doing in simple, clear English so that people can understand? And then because it is in that understanding that, they can give your business like a, thorough considerations, and then run it through their checklist of, factors they consider in accepting, companies. So so on that, you want to ensure that you communicate very, very concisely. And one tip here is get someone who is very knowledgeable about YC applications. There are a couple of guys out there who understands exactly how this thing works. They've done it over and over again, and then they will be able to guide. In our case, so we had one of our advisors who was very, very helpful in the process. So what we did was to create a Google Docs where we put our responses to all the questions, because in any case you understand your business better than anyone else, right? So you just draft out your initial responses to the questions, and then the person will be able to help you review the language and all those things, the tone and everything, to ensure that it's basically okay, and then and good to go. So one warning here is don't involve like multiple people here. So which is why it is important that whoever is doing this for you is someone that understands exactly how the application process works, because you run the risk of having conflicting advices if you involved like a multiple guys to do this for you. And then so by the time you have you create, there will be two columns. One would be your own raw responses. Another one would be the one your your advisor or whoever, or your reviewer is suggesting that you do. And then at the end of the day, you can, compare and contrast, and then agree on what you're finally, going ahead with. And then don't rush this. Some people will tell you, hey, we spent 3 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever it is, in coming up with the application. It shouldn't be. I can tell you it's not that difficult, right? So just ensure that, you are able to settle down to do it. It doesn't take more than 2 hours, 2-3 hours for you to draft out your responses. Of course, you can now start, refining your language, tone, and all of that, just to ensure that it's perfect. But when you find yourself spending, hours, weeks, and what have you on the application, then it's a problem, and then you want to backtrack and start all over again and ensure that you are doing it correctly. And then another tip here is which is connected to coming up with a concise responses, is if you don't you try as much as possible to avoid like a very lengthy kind of responses, because at the end of the day, you could be saying something different or conflicting points, which ends up affecting the quality of your responses. So condense your answers, and by the time after drafting out your initial points, right, and then you go over it again, you will see what you can merge together and all of that. And then another key point here, that I forgot to put down here is, I mentioned earlier on that there are 50 questions. You would find out that there are some questions like they are like very similar. Essentially, you can even put it like, so it's the same question, but rephrased in another manner, just to test the consistency of what you're talking about. So if you're not really, if you didn't do it very well, you could be responding to the same questions differently. And then that could, basically highlight, the fact that, maybe you don't really know what you're talking about. And then, another thing that I would say, which is the last point under this written application stages, it's all about, communicating your business model effectively and in a simple manner that, people can easily understand. And then this same point is applicable to even you pitching your startup to angel investors. You could have the best, idea in this world, but if you're not able to communicate the business model, it could as well point out the fact that, probably you are yet to figure out, the business model. So it's not so much of ideas, but to be honest, it's so much of, execution, and then having the business model and the likes figured out. And then those kind of things, in my experience, stands out a whole lot when these guys are, considering the application. And then one thing I saw with the, during YC is, talking to a number of, batch mates, right? I noticed that quite a number of, batch mates, they had some very good traction. So, that could mean, traction, was, one of the key considerations when these guys were reviewing the application. And, thinking through that, a lot more, you will find out that most of the ideas, the solutions we're putting together in Africa, they are like, something that has been done somewhere. Like what Mecho is doing today is, what some guys have done in the US, maybe like 10, 20, 30 years ago, that was just doing here. So for those kind of solutions, I think they place like a whole lot of weight on traction, because it then means that you are able to you're able to execute the idea. That's basically what it means. But people will tell you, hey, they don't care about traction and all of that. I think they do. If the idea is something that you are copying something or domesticating something that has been done elsewhere, I think traction is very, very important. So you want to ensure that you're able to work very hard to gain some traction before applying. Where I think traction is not so much of importance is if you are building a very high-tech solution, right? And you're able to demonstrate that, hey, we've been able to get the initial idea out. I mean, that's a lot of is enough traction on its own. So please note that. So I will go to the interview stage. So like I mentioned earlier on, it's just 10 minutes. And then when we got our interview invites, so we started, checking on the internet, looking for interview tips and all of that. We came across an article that listed like, like over 100, possible questions, right? And I remember, from like morning till evening, the first day, where we're just, practicing those possible questions and all of that. And at some point, it was, getting overwhelming, because, I mean, you find out that, if you go over it again, you probably say, something different, right? So we knew that could be a problem, right? And so we went back to our advisors, and he did something that was really, really, really brilliant. So what he did was to organize like a mock interviews for us. He basically got like, 3 different YC founders. That's the people that had gone through the YC interview process, to share their experience with us and all of that. And one thing that I think, was, I mean, the guys gave some very interesting and important tips for us, because, to be honest with you, this thing is really, really all about the YC partners understanding, your solution, your startup, understanding it, and understanding, the size or the scale of the problem you're solving, because those things are very, very important to them. So you could have a very, it's possible you're able to identify like a very good problem, but it's possible that not a lot of people have that problem, which means, it's not a big enough market. So they're not interested in those kind of ideas. So they're interested in something really, really big, right? So being able to communicate, the scale of the problem, the size of the markets you're addressing, those things are very, very important. And then if you want to communicate those things, you don't use English, you use numbers. So people, they are able to easily, relate with what you're saying, and then they can understand. And then if there are, companies, similar companies or startups doing what you're doing, especially the popular ones in the US, and then you're able to say, hey, we are, Uber for something. So they're able to easily understand. So, and then those were the kind of tips that the guys shared, that was very, very useful for us. For instance, we wanted to demonstrate, um, how, people running commercial transport business or logistics business, how they were losing money to bad quality repairs and maintenance. And then I was just speaking English. And then the guy was like, no. You have to say something like, hey, Uber drivers, they lose 40% of their revenue to bad quality maintenance. So the guys were able to understand, I said, Kobo. On Kobo, I was with Kobo and I noticed people were losing a lot of revenue, a lot of their revenue to bad quality. And they said, what is a lot of revenue? A lot could be anything. So, but if you say something like 40%, 60%, very concise, right? And they'll be able to understand. And to be honest, when they asked about that, and I said, Uber, I gave that example 40%, and I saw the expression on the guy's face. Oh, really? Yeah, because it means there was that connection. He was able to understand exactly what the scale of that problem. So that is really, really important. And then remember, you have just 10 minutes. So typically it starts with, so tell us, what are you building? Tell us what you're working on. Same question, they could ask that same question in different ways. Or introduce yourself, or let's meet you and Michael and this, and they will tell you, don't dress formal, we're not formal. Just, this is just a friendly chat, just for us to understand, to get to know you and understand what you're working on. And then for us, they just appeared on the screen and, smiling and say, hey guys, my name is Michael, my name is this. So tell us what you're working on, right? So you basically, that tell us what you're working on means, right? You want to talk about the problem, the solution, right? The problem, the solution, and then your traction. That is what you've been able to do, right? So it means you have to be able to say those things very quickly. And then if you don't wait, for them to ask you questions. And then you want to be very, very careful, as to what you are going to say. That's what the second point is talking about. You don't want to say, box yourself to a corner, and then get to that point where they ask you, questions that will throw you off balance. So it's those things are really, really, really important. And then if you are able to communicate your numbers very well, right? You're able to communicate your numbers very well, both in your applications, and you're able to say it out, right? During interviews. For us, we didn't get any follow-on interviews because I guess, we're able to, to communicate things, clearly. Our advisor was, I saw the, one, I think it was about, the question was about target market or something like that. The way he rephrased the question, the way you rephrased the, the response. I was going through that document, I think some weeks back, and I did a screenshot of that into him, that this guy, you are a genius. And the guy was like, and funny enough, he said, even I myself, I applied to YC and I didn't get him, right? But I've been able to help a lot of people to get in. So you can see exactly what I'm talking about, right? So he has helped a whole lot of people, and then he understands, those things. But at the end of the day, it's a lot depend on you as a founder, because it's basically what you are putting out there. You understand your business better than anyone. It's whatever responses you put together that these guys would basically work on. They help you check the consistency of different your tones and everything, and in most cases they're not going to help you rewrite the application. They give you a suggestion. Oh, why don't you construct it this way and all of that. So, and then one other thing I found very, very, useful during the process is we had, pitched our startup to, a number of angel investors, right? And, because these angel investors, especially very, very experienced ones, they ask you basically same questions. All they want to do is to understand, your business, right? And during one of the YC sessions, I remember the CEO, Michael, it says something like, oh, if we're asking you questions, and then, so we wanted to see how excited about what you're building. Because if you are not excited, so it means that, halfway through the journey, you can just, drop off and say, hey, I'm not doing this thing again. When things get tough, right? So, like the way you communicate the enthusiasm you bring into that the conversation and all of that. I remember we had the mock-up, the mock interviews with the with three different YC founders, and then the way those guys were throwing questions and all of that, and I think I was totally tired. I left from from the office that day to to where we use, and I told my co-founder, let me just go somewhere to sleep for a few minutes, and I was sleeping till like 5:30 or 6 or thereabouts before he came to wake me up. And then the interview was 11. The guy wanted to start the mock interviews around that time. I said, hey, let me sleep first. So we started mock interview, and the guy was with us till like 10:30. At some point, I told the guy, hey, please, let's just go ahead with this thing. I know we'll do well. You understand? So if the level of preparations you put into the whole thing, can be a lot helpful. And another thing, as I bring this to a close, is, typically you are not a solo founder, and even YC, they don't advise, like you being a solo founder means you're the only one. So typically you have a co-founder or co-founders, right? So you shouldn't be the only one doing all the talkings. So you need to structure, the interview in such a way that you distribute, the way you come up with a plan on how you would respond. This was a huge struggle for us, right? Because so we came up with this framework, some sort of general framework where we said, okay, if there are questions on business, on business model, team, something like that, okay, how we'll handle it. If there are questions on technical, like how you deal with quality assurance process and like core operations, we said, oh, my co-founder, you want to do that. So that was just basically based on our competence areas, if I may use that that word. So that was what we used as a framework to sort of divide the questions. And then so the question now is, if you can picture that in your in your mind, where so you have 10 minutes to do this. So how are you going to be able to determine that, oh, this is this, this is that? So you can see that means it requires a whole lot of practice. So it means you guys have practiced together, and you'll be able to say something like this, something like this, something like this falls under operations. And one other tip that the guy gave us was, so you don't want to be seen, like conflicting each other, because that could even send a bad signal to these guys that, hey, these guys will just come up with one argument and then scatter this whole thing. It's one of the things that not only YC, investors generally, that they care about, when it comes to startup investment. Because, if founders just come up with one argument, one quarrel, and then they decide to go their separate ways, that's the end of that startup. Right. And then, so these guys, when they do this, they are looking out for those kind of things. Right. So this was a huge struggle for us. But I don't know. I think the level of practice, that went into this was very helpful for us. So and then they say, "Oh, just tap yourself." So sit very close to each other, and then so if this question, I'll be able to go. So you just tap him, go. Or if it's this one, you tap him, go. You understand? And then we're able to do it, and then such that no one was doing all the talking, and it went very well at the end of the day. So I think those are the the few tips based on our own experience. So I'm happy to take your questions, if any. Thank you.
Okay. So the session is open now for questions. So if you have any questions for Mr. Owoade, now is the time to bring them out.
Okay, I think there are some questions here. Yes, the video beats 1 minute 60-second video recording. This was another monster, right? We practiced this thing, like, I don't know. I think it was one of the things that actually delayed the application. And if you do that a lot, it's going to help you with the if you do that very well, it's going to help you with the interviews. I think at the end of the day, we're able to do 51 or 52 seconds, right? So when we looked at other ones we did, I can't count the number of the number of recordings we did. But when we kept going back, reviewing what we done, that was like the best, from what we could do. And then, yeah. So in fact, I think I put that as part of when they asked what was the toughest thing you could do or something like that. Yeah, I think that was our response to that particular question. So initially, I was thinking, is this impossible at all? Can we do this thing? After trying a few times, and then, we sometimes my co-founder will do it very well. He will handle his part very well. I won't handle my part very well. Sometimes it's the other way around, and I'll be like, oh my God, why? What's going on? Is it possible we'll be able to do this thing? And then when we eventually did it in 50-something seconds, not even up to 60 seconds, I said, wow, so this means nothing is actually impossible. With adequate practice, virtually anything can be done. So yeah, it was very difficult, but I mean, we did it, we practiced several times, and eventually we're able to do it.
Okay, so Mr. Owoade, so we have a question in the chat box that says, how were you able to secure someone who would, or an advisor, basically, someone who advised you on the application process itself?
Okay, so put it this way. So for us, getting this guy as an advisor wasn't specifically for YC, right? So it was just based on, hey, my experience. I've never been a startup person. I've never worked in a startup environment all my life. So, and coming from a consulting background, so I know that there's a position, a big one actually, for expertise. So why do you want to be struggling if you have, like an expert to guide you and all of that? So that was the whole idea of in looking for someone to provide that support. And he said, as part of when we started like that, bargaining on okay, what would be your benefit and blah blah blah. I say, okay, you give me equity, okay, and then of course you want to maximize your position. Okay, so what else can you do for us? Okay, let's agree. And then YC was part of the bargain. Oh, I will help you through YC applications and all of that, which I believe was one of the reasons why it was pushing. So that is one. Another one is most of these guys, so they're willing to help. So if as an example, you have you want to do YC application, I say, hey, you reach out to to those guys. You've done it before. Can you help me? Typically, they would help you out, right? Like I had some guys from SA reached out to us immediately after the announcement was made. They wanted to apply, and then so they got in touch with me, and I said, hey, I'm not an expert. We had someone that helped us through the process and all that. They said, okay, you help us first, and then also introduce us to this person, which I did. I did what I could do in supporting them. And then right now I have like, three different YC founders. Three different startups, that they've got, they reached out to me when they were applying, and now they have, they've gotten the interview invites, and then, wanted me to help with a mock-up kind of stuff. So typically, people will help but it's in most cases it's better if you go through like some sort of intro, like you go through someone that knows them, like opposed to just dropping a cold email or something like that. Chances that you get a response to that kind of cold emails is very, very low, but it's not impossible.
All right. So, sir, what are the chances for solo founders to get in based on your experiences or your experience?
It's not impossible. It's not impossible. So, for instance, in Batch, I have a guy who was just him, an Indian guy. So it was just him. But what YC partners themselves will advise is don't do it alone, because this thing can be very tough. You understand? But I believe if you're building something like like a hard tech, like you're replicating an idea that's already been done in US or whatever here, right? So if you're building that hard tech kind of stuff, I think you have a very high chances. But if you're building something that's been done somewhere, I think, and you don't have like that very strong traction, it could be an hindrance.
Great. So I have one question here that says, what were some of the things you were unprepared for? So I think this is kind of like a personal question to you. So like, while you were preparing, what areas didn't you touch? So basically, it's just how prepared, or basically how prepared you were for the interview session. So if you could just share a bit.
Yes, I think the only thing I can think of right now is when you get a lot of advices like time yourself, do 60 seconds and blah blah blah. So we're doing it, and then we noticed it wasn't working, so we just decided to drop that idea. And at the end of the day, I can confirm that that's that thing doesn't make sense, and it's not useful. Just being able to like communicate very clearly, and then be concise in your response.
Okay, so Sam, what was really the experience like at YC?
Yeah, I think the experience was really, really, really massive. First, they will make you to believe that you are among the the best. Basically, that kind of thing, can raise your shoulders like, hey, but then there's a whole lot of work you need to do in building the startup. But then having that feelings that, hey, I'm among the best is something that can really be very helpful, to one's morale. So that is one. Then two, so these guys, remember, they've been doing this thing for years. So they have real life data. So and then they know the kind of areas where you would have issues, or where you can possibly have issues, or where you can possibly encounter challenges. So they know, and then they are giving you like a direct advices on those things. Or if this issue happens, this is how to approach it based on, past startup YC companies. Oh, when these guys were having these issues, these challenges, this was how they addressed it. When these guys were having these issues, this was how they addressed it. So they know exactly what they're talking about. And those like tips and everything, can be very, very helpful. And then another thing is it's a huge, stamp of, approval or acceptance, so to speak. So if people know that you're a YC company, you basically don't struggle for anything, which is crazy. You want to open a bank account, you want to do this, the lawyers are coming to you to say, hey, they are not even discussing fees or anything. They have like a key partnerships with virtually everything you need, for starting from company incorporation to your taxes to everything. Right. And then you have, access to a lot of investors. In most cases, you're not even looking for them, they will come to you. Right. So I think those are the kind of, things that are very, very, interesting about being a YC company.
Okay, so I have a very interesting question here. So it's actually going back to while you were presenting your slide. So it says, what were the reasons you gave the team you advised to choose YC over the $4 million term sheet? So it's actually you have to actually kind of like give us in-depth reasons as to why you let them turn down, or you advise them to turn down that particular sum.
Okay, so unfortunately I won't be able to, because I won't be able to dwell so much on this, but I'll just touch on a few points. So number one is the valuation cap. They were going to do that $4 million at. Right. So with YC, just being a YC company, they will get ×3 of that valuation cap. If you see what I mean. And that is directly connected to the stake of the company you're selling off. So if, for instance, you're raising $4 million at 12 million cap, that is about 33% of your company. So it means you're selling 33% of your company. So from the numbers that this guy gave me, their figures, their revenue, their margins, their take rates, and everything. So I could see clearly, without any assumptions or whatever, that they will get between 3 to 4x of that cap. So which means even YC will take 7% for 125K, right? By the time you do the maths, at the end of the day, you're a lot better doing YC than taking that $4 million. So that was number one reason. Then number two reason was the fact that you are going to sell a lot less than that $4, right? So being part of YC family, opens, gives you access to a lot of other opportunities, a whole lot of other opportunities. So I think those are the two key reasons. And then, so one of the founders called me, was it on Monday or Tuesday? And it was like, so I was asking, I just advised, so this is my own suggestion. I was asking, so what did you guys do? They said, okay, we're in YC now. Obviously, they would have, spoken to other guys. I said, yeah, so these guys will be unhappy and all of that. But then, one thing I've realized is when it comes to this thing, nobody is doing anybody any favors at all. So if they don't find your company credible or whatever, they are not going to invest in the company. If they found any how do I put it now? If any issues whatsoever, they will not overlook it. So what you can do is, of course, you want to keep relationship, and then there are some of big guys participating in this formula. I said, even if you tell them that you've gotten into YC, they know straight up that their chances are are limited. They know. So tell them. So as opposed to taking 4, just take 1, just to keep that relationship. But hey, do YC, and that's what they're doing.
Okay, thanks, sir. So I think because we're short of time, we will take one last question, and any other questions that we may have, you could just share to our email address, and we'll ensure that Mr. Shegu answers them and revert back. So one question that says, what's the impact of staff strength to your success at YC? So this is more or less buttressing on amongst the team members, does staff strength really play a key factor or a determining factor to your acceptance to Y Combinator?
So the answer is no. But I need to mention this. One thing that was very interesting, and which YC considers a whole lot, which I forgot to mention earlier on, is typically, almost all startups, you call yourself a tech company, a tech startup. So if none of the founders or the co-founders is a technical person, it could be a problem. In fact, I think I've heard Michael said that thing several times. They might not even look at your, I will give you your application so much consideration. And what do I mean by that? So it means that so there are two founders, co-founders, and none of them is a tech person. So which means you are going to outsource your application building, your tech, everything 100%. So typically they have issues with that kind of thing, because that tech is basically what you're selling, and then you don't have a full grip of that thing. So it means if either you outsource it to one guy, and then the guy decides to act funny, and then so it means the whole thing is gone. So you want to ensure that you have a tech person as a co-founder, if possible. For us, myself and my co-founder were not a technical person, but because our business is kind of operations heavy, right? So, and then there is a mechanic. So that is like a technical person. So that sort of substitutes the you know,
Hello, Mr. Shegun. It
hello.
seems. All right, all right. Yeah, we can hear you now. Please go on.
Okay, so that sort of substituted the uh, you know, the idea of having a technical you know, a technical founder. So I mean, that's, you know, if it's something, as much as possible, it's something you want to you know, to ensure that you take into consideration when you are maybe looking for a co-founder or something like that, so that you sort of have a balanced you know, kind of skill set in the team.
All right, Mr. Shegun, thank you so much for the wonderful session. I think I have. So let's just quickly take this one question, please, if you don't mind, Mr. Shegun. So, Sir Franklin is asking, I don't have a website, I don't have a product. Can I apply to YC? Is it possible, Mr. Shegun?
You don't have a product, you don't have
we
a
have a website. Can I apply to YC?
I think if what you're building is like a hard tech you know, products, and then as at the time you're applying, your product is not fully ready, yes, you can. But if it's not like a hardcore if it's not like a hardcore kind of product, I don't think you are ready yet.
All right, Mr. Shegun, thank you so much for answering that last question and for taking time out to share practical guide on how founders in Africa especially can apply, you know, to Y Combinator. Thank you so much. We also appreciate our listeners who also joined in to listen. We appreciate you all. We thank you all for taking our time to join this session. From time to time, of course, we have programs like this, you know, where we invite speakers or founders in the ecosystem to share, you know, knowledge. And we believe that, or we are hoping that for our next session, you would also be a partaker in this session also. So this brings us to the end of the program. Mr. Shegun, thank you once again for joining us. We really appreciate you, and we wish you all a very wonderful